So what are we talking about today, Patrick? We're going to be talking about, of course, the what's in it for me for you, right? So
Right.
we want you to learn how to read the tides of seasonal change that happens in e-commerce, specifically in this case with Amazon, but it does apply to other sales channels as well. We're going to be talking about some of the big things that have happened recently and we expect to happen in regards to traffic. In other words, shopper eyeballs to your product listings, the ad costs, of course, and the rising ad costs, anything that is being implemented by government and corporate as far as policy or rules or anything else that is certainly going to affect that. And then Patrick and I are going to be talking to you about some of our observations and our predictions. We're going to move very fast here. So hopefully you're all ready to go. Do me a favor. Let's make sure that everybody's paying attention here. Go ahead and put a 5 in the chat if you're ready to get going. All right. So quickly, just to let you know, this whole session is sponsored. Yes, that's a new word. Sponsored by our advertising agency, Canopy Management, where you get a chance to work with multi-million-dollar sellers, top Amazon insiders, and of course, accredited experts. And we'll get into what most of those accredited Amazon experts actually report directly into Patrick. And so I'll introduce him shortly, but we do have a very established, proven track record for our clients. You can see some of the numbers we've been able to perform. Those are average across, not just like, hey, here's what we were able to achieve, but that's an average. So pretty decent there. For those of you who are not familiar with me, my name is Brian Johnson. I go by Brian R. Johnson. So to differentiate myself from some of the more popular people out there in the world with the same name, I've been in the e-commerce space for about 14 years, and I've been in Amazon space for the last 7 years. A lot of my focus is primarily on two things. One, of course, is the Amazon advertising, the native PPC advertising, as well as a lot of you have heard me speaking this year regarding an advanced or different way of doing product listing optimization. In other words, standing out from the competition, really differentiating your benefits of your products from your competitors. So it's not like anything you've seen in recent years. It's definitely going against the grain. And that's the whole point. Some of you may already know that I had introduced the original or the first Amazon PPC software, the first professional training academy for sponsor products. And of course, I'm one of the co-founders of our sponsor, Canopy Management, the done for you advertising agency. Now, Patrick joins me today. I actually pulled him in from our own agency team. We have a staff, I don't know, somewhere in, I don't even know what we're at now these days, somewhere between 60 and 80 staff worldwide. I should actually know the number more accurately, but I know that it's at least 60. And Patrick is actually one of our directors. He is our head of our Amazon advertising division. He handles, he basically manages multiple teams, multiple ad teams, which is the way that we structure, the way that we handle our client advertising and marketing. So what that means is that Patrick ends up leading over 30 Amazon PPC specialists and experts in their own right, tactical specialists. Patrick works as the tactical specialist. So in other words, anything gets escalated up to him, he can certainly come in with a resolution or a path for them to solve it. And he has been the primary growth reason for our advertising division, scaling the team from when he started with 10, now up to well over 30. And we keep on hiring every single week. So if you know anybody who is looking to work with a phenomenal agency like ours that has the advertising background, we'd like to talk to him. Patrick also comes in, like a lot of our senior staff, a lot of our staff actually comes in with selling experience also. Like Patrick, like myself, Patrick actually has been a seller for many years and has had 3 brands. I'm working on my 4th, but I still only have just the 3 brands right now. And of course, he's been with Canopy since we started, so the very early days. So welcome, Patrick. Glad to have you here.
Thank you very much. I am in employee number 8.
Employee number 8. Yes, excellent. Very good.
Not at the founder level. I'm not at the founder suite yet, but
the only reason we got launched far enough is because you are number 8. So
thank you very much.
All right, let's go ahead and jump in here. Let's start out. The first thing we were talking about, of course, is traffic and what the state of the Amazon channel and e-commerce in general. As one of the things that we certainly observed is earlier on this year, about February, March, when a lot of the local states inside the United States have started relaxing the COVID restrictions. People jumped out of their house. They didn't just walk out, they jumped out. They wanted to get out to restaurants. They wanted to get out to retail. We actually have some supporting data that will actually show you what kind of impact that had. But as the COVID restrictions relaxed, people got away from their computer, got outside, got out to, start doing some retail shopping. And that created essentially a glut, or basically a reduction in the amount of shopper traffic that came on to Amazon to shop. And a lot of us as sellers, we recognized that and went like, oh, crap, it's like, where'd all the seller traffic, or the shopper traffic, go in March, April, May, and into June? June, of course, had some recovery simply because Amazon advertised heavily for Prime Day. And then right afterwards, it cycled right back again to like, okay, everybody's, jumped off of the platform and traffic dropped significantly.
March had a bit of a bump with the stimulus checks going out, but I mean, if you remove those little bumps, it was a nice little glide path from January to June into July.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's something where anybody who's either wasn't aware of the causes for the drop in traffic, maybe weren't plugged into the right channels to learn that, yes, overall on Amazon and overall e-commerce dropped in traffic. While we were aware of that, not everybody was plugged into us every day. So yeah, definitely that was definitely the impact. However, kind of like the stock market and how people react emotionally to certain situations and different news and their own experience, their own perspective, the same thing happens in e-commerce when it comes to sellers, especially for smaller sellers who are still learning the ropes. They haven't gone through any kind of a seasonal cyclical, what is it, like kind of year-over-year changes as far as the cycles that go through each year.
Right.
Now, go ahead. Yep.
I think the biggest thing is, like you said earlier, people just ran out of the house. There was an article I read that someone described it as an experiential economy, but Amazon CFO put it perfectly in their Q2 earnings call. People want to do stuff; they don't want to buy stuff. That was really it. And the traffic was not just down across Amazon; it was down across the Etsy's and the Wayfairs and the eBays. So it really was just people purposefully running away from their computers to get outside and get some vitamin D the old-fashioned way.
And I realized that when I'd asked people to share, I wasn't sharing to everybody on the chat here, but yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I certainly want to make sure that I recognize the people that are attending live with us today. If you're not catching the replay, Andrew says the extra hour really built up the anticipation. I'm glad you can appreciate it. We didn't at the time, but we are here now. So I appreciate Patrick willing to jump back on with me here. So kind of curious, as far as those of you who are in the room with us, what kind of traffic drop did you see? As far as, most of us saw as far as our ad impressions, as far as our product sessions dropped significantly. Probably the first thing that we noticed, of course, was, wait, where did all the sales go, right? And then you trace it back and you realize that, oh, it's a chain, right? It starts out with impressions and sessions to a product. And then, of course, that translates to conversion rate. And then, of course, sales, right? That goes along with that. And so most of us felt the drop this year in sales, especially having such, some phenomenal months back in 2020, to have 2021 really fall flat in a lot of areas. Now, certainly the areas that where, that didn't apply to every single product, but definitely there was less traffic. There was less people who were shopping online. So it wasn't like Amazon's, as far as what COVID did, it didn't make a permanent shift of people shopping online, but I would say that it definitely has helped us as far as year over year. But now what things are going to have to they're going to have to level off, and the retailers, the brick and mortar retailers, of course, they are fighting hard in order to get that traffic back in their door, and they're probably going to be pretty desperate. We'll talk about that a little bit later on here. Let's keep moving it forward here. Nate says our sales actually went up for automotive because people got back in their cars. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, honestly, I mean, so my family and I are avid RV owners, and so we go out and we know for sure, you know, we want to upgrade our RV and our truck, and we cannot get those because those are simply just not available. A lot of people got out and started doing camping and RV and travel in general, and we'll show you some charts where travel just went through the roof this year as COVID restrictions relaxed a bit.
Right. And also, Nate, there's less new cars out there. They have inventory issues. So lots of people are doing.
Yeah, speaking of traffic, yeah, the used car market actually exploded. I actually had a serious question that I went into one of the big Toyota dealerships in my area, and they literally had, I mean, this is a lot that's normally packed, and they've got several hundred cars, and I counted less than 30 on their entire lot. And I went up and I seriously asked them and said, "Oh, where are you guys moving to?" And they're like, "What are you talking about? We just sold everything we have and can't get anything new." It's like, oh, like, well, maybe you shouldn't do this next, annual sales event. And yet they still did. So, this kind of actually, this chart, I don't remember where we pulled a number of charts from the industry, from people we trust. I didn't put in the source on these. I apologize, but we can get those if you really need them. But this is kind of depicting as far as e-commerce in general, not specific to Amazon. This is showing where the comparison of about this time last year versus this year. So July of 2020 versus July of 2021, the last full month, we saw where e-commerce significantly dropped overall versus retail. And you can see over there, transportation and travel spiked up quite considerably. So I absolutely agree. Nate, it makes perfect sense as far as the transportation and travel definitely affected those kind of product lines that were conducive. Now that's going to correct also, of course, at some point, but right now you got a big spike going on, I imagine. But definitely e-commerce, education, of course, definitely dropped down. Certainly anything, let's see here. We've got,
there's nothing really up, but pharma and insurance and retail and
oh, they had a little bit of a bump. Yeah, that's a good point. So it'll be interesting to see what the August over August and September over September, but kind of like we're not that surprised based off of just how people are reacting to COVID restrictions or lack of COVID restrictions. Obviously, with Delta going around, there's a lot more COVID restrictions going back into play. And so that may bring some of the traffic. In fact, I'm sure it will. We'll talk about that here in the future. We'll talk about as far as what that's going to do for future sales on Amazon specifically. Sate, thank you very much for continuing to jump in here. Obviously, we had some challenges, so really appreciate you jumping back in here. Now, we do have a few extra charts here that kind of depicts as far as impressions, ad spend, as well as far as sales, I believe, or ACOS, I guess it is on this one here. I believe that we pulled this one in, and it looks like we lost. It looks like we lost Patrick's connection. We'll get him back in here. So let me kind of walk through this. What we can see on this, of course, is the impressions for, yeah, we got you back. You're muted still. So with impressions, of course, we can see where it is pretty, nominal throughout the year. And then, of course, in, as far as this year, we did have the spike, as Patrick mentioned earlier, is back around March. We had this spike when the stimulus checks came out, right?
Yeah. And that's really the only anomaly, that and Prime Day are the only anomalies in that sort of, and that's, average impressions 120,000 a day down to about 80. That's big. That's a big dip.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say two parts of this. So the stimulus checks obviously what created this bump, of course, is people got paid, right? And so they said, oh, let's
Mhm.
go ahead and buy some things that we really, really need for our family, like an Xbox or something, right?
Right.
Um, and then Prime Day, of course, is so heavily advertised by Amazon and so heavily promoted that people, they do bring shoppers back on, but you can see it's extremely temporary and it drops right back down again because as we normally see during the summer months, when people are able to travel, they will travel and they will take their family on vacation, especially because there's a lot of families with kids who are expecting to be back in school in August and September, and they need to get out and have some kind of a beach trip or a camping trip or going to a water park or something, whatever they've got access to, they're trying to get it in right now through typically through Labor Day. I know some
Right.
counties
Right.
in my area have already started school this week, but
I think that the biggest influence on traffic going forward is going to be the calendar. Back to school partners that we have in house. Back to school partners are really starting to see traffic come back, and I look at them as like the canary in a coal mine for
yep.
sort of normalization of traffic patterns. The size is going to be different, but the sort of the curve should look the same, and we're getting traffic back to school in droves. And I think, you'll just see Halloween build on that, Cyber build on that, and Christmas build on that. So the calendar's not going to change unless something drastic COVID-y happens, I think.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Let's kind of jump in here to next one here. Oh, as far as like ad revenues, this was an ad spend. As we expected, the revenue continued to press up throughout the year. This in part is as far as like the sales that came through specifically because of advertising, in part was because a lot of the reaction that we saw from sellers was to increase their advertising. So it shows like, oh, ad revenue went up. Well, ad costs went up also. So the ad
Mhm.
spend went right up along with it in a lot of cases, mostly because of inexperience of sellers. So you probably have seen that within your own product niche where all of a sudden you've got a bunch of, especially the novice competitors are overbidding what the value of the product that they're selling. They're overspending. They're being a lot more aggressive in desperation, trying to increase their volume, trying to launch new products. And you end up paying for that as a result if you're focused entirely on PPC and just trying to compete head to head with them from a PPC standpoint. There's other ways that you can compete.
Right. We see a lot of sellers who think that if they lose a sale, somebody else got it. And sometimes there just wasn't a sale. And so if you bid up in sort of a vacuum, you're just creating bigger costs for everybody
Yep.
across the channel.
Exactly. So Patrick, let me have you talk about ACOS for a little bit here. I believe this one came from Mike Zagari's team, if I recall correctly, from their own data. This is just kind of a sampling of a community or a platform of sellers and the way that things like ad costs come into play. We do the same thing with our own software in our own community, but I think this one kind of depicted it nicely enough for this presentation. So my shout out to Mike. Thank you for that. Talk to us a little bit about this one.
I think ACOS is, it's math, it's a fraction. And I think both the numerator and denominator were moving the wrong way, right? We had costs moving up and we had sales moving down. And I think part of that goes back to what you said before. We had some novice people who were chasing sales. But when you have a slowdown in traffic at the same time, you end up with a situation where everybody's pushing on the same string, right? You're just driving up costs. The real test is as soon as we started with any place we've seen back to school traffic come back, CPCs have gone down like that. A costs have come right back into line. So it was more a function of taking a step back and getting the 30,000 foot view of what was happening in the overall economy and then in e-commerce economy and responding to that instead of responding to your own little area of the Amazon
Right.
equals.
Exactly. For those of you who are on the call with us, I posted a question to you in the chat. I would love your feedback on that, please. Yeah, I think, like we're talking about that post Prime Day panic. We see this every time it comes off of Black Friday through Cyber Monday, and then things return to normal. In novice sellers, they panic when people stop ordering items that they can't receive by Christmas Day. Inexperienced sellers panic and they go more aggressive on their advertising, thinking that it's focused on them, right? Thinking it's something they're doing incorrectly, and they're trying to salvage the sales that they adapted to, that they got used to recently, and not realizing that it is seasonal, it is temporary. Take it, and now's your chance to do profit taking. Now, Patrick, tell me a little bit as far as like within Canopy management, how do we do post major event like this? How do we handle that in order for the best interest of the client?
Generally, what we'll do is we'll take snapshots coming into that. So we take a sort of a normalized snapshot. In your slide, it would be to the left of the Prime Day dip in ACOS. What we would do is we take a snapshot of where things were then, and when the Prime Day is over, when the Cyber Week is over, we'll generally revert back. In almost every case, sometimes you get some area, some keywords that perform very well, so you don't pull them all the way back to the prior position. But I've always taken the mindset that you want to turn off the spend. These moves, these decreases in traffic post tent poles, these tentpole events are so severe that even a sophisticated system that waits for spend to get a little bit out of control before it nips it is often behind the curve too many times. So if you get into a situation where you're optimizing every 3, 4, 7 days, you're still overspending in each tranche, because the first 3 days after Christmas are bad, but the next 3 days are slower, and then 3 days after that are slower still, and the 3 days after that are slower still. So if you're optimizing every 4 days, you're literally getting run over 4 times before you get your bids in the right spot. So we just go back to where we were, and that way we can be aggressive, but our signals are saying traffic's down, no need to bid up.
Nice. I appreciate that, Patrick. Hopefully you all caught those couple of pro tips there that Patrick just put out there. If not, then you can catch those in the replay, and hopefully you're catching the next ones that are coming up here. Let's talk a little bit as far as ad costs, a little bit more in depth here. This is something that I normally see from year over year. This is normal across any channel that has advertising, whether it's Google or Facebook or YouTube or Amazon, of course, is that cost per clicks, or CPCs, gradually increase year over year. It is normal because as competition continues to try to one up each other, they're constantly pushing to see how, they're not always using reason. As far as how much should I bid based off of the value and the net profitability of my product, they're doing it. It's like I need sales, I need to move product, I need to clear inventory out of Amazon warehouses before they charge me, and therefore I'm going to continue to be more aggressive based on my personal needs, and that continually pulls up the average ad costs on a cost per click, and the competitiveness on each ad placement more and more with each event, with each month that goes by, with anything like this, right? And so it works out to the best benefit for Amazon, of course, but it can actually work to your advantage too if you understand your numbers. Give me a 1 in the chat if you know your numbers. Do you know what each of the net profit margin is for your products as a minimum? Do you know that for each of your products? Give me a 1 in the chat if that's you. Nice. Okay. So the earlier question that I had as far as like rising A costs and ad costs increased about 10% in the past few weeks, about the same the last few months. Depends on may depend on between fulfilled by merchant versus FBA. Sales been down. for non-compliance or possible high pricing. That is absolutely something. I'm gonna address that one separate. Marianne, is regarding some of the new policies that Amazon has gotten more aggressive on as far as content violations. That we've seen a lot more this year. But let's kind of continue through here. Did you have any other comments on this one, Patrick? As far
Yeah,
as
there's a couple of hidden reasons why I think ad costs have been creeping up. No cookies obviously means that to track user activity, the off Amazon advertising community is much murkier now with all the privacy restrictions. That puts a premium on platforms like Amazon, both on the DSP side where they have first party data and it's gold, or on pay-per-click where you know what you're paying and you know what Mr. and Mrs. Jones typed in the computer to get to your product page. So there's a lot more knowledge that's being obfuscated by the privacy issues off Amazon. Secondarily, I think there's a lot of aggregators and investor-backed brands increasing the price to play on Amazon. Right. This means the good side is for sellers, this means higher valuations for people looking to sell their brands, but it also means higher cost per click for people looking to buy traffic because these investors and aggregators tend to have they can weather down periods a little longer. They tend to be more top line focused. Yep. And so they also have like ad budgets that aren't tied to their performance. Right. They have little piles of money that they need to spend X dollars on advertising, and they go about doing it. Up, down, or sideways in terms of the traffic. But we've seen CPCs grow 40% year over year and a steady move up. It looks like August will be the first move down in CPCs in a while.
Yep. Yeah, we do have some additional input here. Jeff, for instance, points out, seeing an increase of 5 to 6% across the year here. Actually, no, you're saying 5% from March to July, and then another 6% since July. So it's a sudden spike post Prime Day. And I definitely see that.
Yeah, we saw a lot of panic bidding post Prime Day because it was so close to July 4th that I don't know. Again, I always revert to the calendar, Brian. I've had your seasonality chart on my wall for forever, long before I ever joined Canopy. And it's like the mall map, right? You have to know that you're in July. You're at the bottom of the online traffic season. Right. You can't be chasing traffic.
Yeah, and I think we saw that definitely disrupted. So what Patrick's referring to is if you're part of my Amazon PPC troubleshooting group, Facebook group, then you probably know is that I came out with a seasonal Amazon seasonal sales chart or traffic chart, I guess it was, years ago. It was like, 4 years ago, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was low resolution and everything. It absolutely needs to be replaced, but it's still out there and it's still tried and true. Now, last year absolutely disrupted that because of warehouse restrictions and quarantine and all these things, right? Mm-hmm. But it is definitely, message me, message me if you can't find that. I can go ahead and point it to you. Message me outside of this live workshop.
It is, and I can get that it's to you. The first place I look because, if you're bidding up or you're bidding down, you really have to know, okay, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen next week? What's going to happen next month? And it literally has saved me thousands of dollars in my own business. Just
knowing that it's coming, it's like
knowing that it's coming, being there, knowing that, hey, it's, it's as smart as saying it's January 2nd. I don't need to be bidding up. Right. But there's little January 2nds and there's little, Prime Day kind of things throughout the calendar. Easter and Father's Day and all of these things mixed in, and you really just need to know what's coming up. Are you heading down a dip? It's like being on a roller coaster, right?
Yeah,
Are you going
absolutely.
up?
Now,
You're
I
going
do
down.
actually want to rebuild that for each category, but right now it is just kind of Amazon in general. Now, I know a few of you are looking for it. Those, if you're in Facebook in the Amazon PPC troubleshooting group, then it's in announcements, and the FAQ section should be listed in there.
And I used it last week, so it still works.
Hopefully not as toilet paper.
There's your proof in the pudding right there. So
yeah. And this is something that we normally do see is that now this is across the last 2 years here. Look, actually since beginning of January of 2000.
Yeah. And it usually pulls back. The real anomaly this year was this sort of March to July section where you normally see a pullback for that normal seasonal slowdown. The bidding process also pulled back. This year that was flipped. And I think a lot of that has to do with some of the things we were talking about earlier with the aggregators, with the no cookies. A lot of people are trying to get closer to their customer with their advertising buys as well.
Yeah, I think people kind of went into a state of shock a little bit when COVID really started getting, rolling out and really hitting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's plenty of reasons for that. I mean, you could go on for the next 2 weeks just talking about politics and misinformation and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really matter. What it did to the Amazon platform, of course, and about what we saw last year around March and April, was we started having restrictions where Amazon shifted to, oh yeah, your 2-day Prime item is now going to take 3 to 5 weeks to ship to you. And so that disrupted sales, the ability to deliver considerably. And so there was a big pullback, as Patrick pointed out there, a big pullback between March and April of last year. And then this year, they're doing the exact opposite, where they're trying to press the gas in combination with off Amazon advertising, with panic advertising. And I'm sure the next time the Amazon says, hey, you know what, we're going to raise the cost and your fees on having too much product in store. I love what was it we saw yesterday? So it was a combination of Amazon saying, it's like, okay, we're going to restrict how much inventory that you can ship in. However, we're going to negatively impact your ranking and your visibility if you frequently run out of stock.
Yep.
So it's like, thanks, Amazon, you're awesome.
Yeah. Before we go on to the next slide, but one of the things that I think people should give serious thought to is thinking about increasing your prices. I generally don't give pricing advice, but U.S. retailers, this is not the only costs that are going up for sellers and retailers across the country. Retailing as a whole is going to face roughly $250 billion in added costs across the holiday, with the entire pipeline, all of the shipping, everything in that supply chain is more expensive. Gasoline, containers, everything. So your competitors, it's either going to impact your profits or you're going to raise prices. If you want to maintain your profit levels, I wouldn't be afraid to entertain price increases. I think you'll be mixed in with a bunch of other people increasing their prices, so it won't be so hurtful to your performance, probably.
Yeah, no, for sure. So here's what I'll tell you on that. So I definitely agree is that, yeah, there's going to be a lot of price increases. Of course, economists were talking about as far as like the inflation that's about to hit or is starting already, because of just, all the bottlenecks and the cost things. Now, for everybody who's joined us, who's in the room, I want you to open up your chat right now, because I want your feedback right now on this to vote whether or not you want to hear it or not. And that is the predecessor. I will tell you, I will give you a pro nugget here, right? Of a pro tip on how do you make it so that you can increase the price of your product. What is it that you need to change today in order to increase your price tomorrow? I will share that with you. I wasn't planning on sharing it during this session, but I will certainly share that on if I get at least half of you to put a 5 in the chat to let me know that you want to hear it. So if I don't get at least half of you putting a 5 in, not going to share it. So awesome. Getting plenty. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Usually it's like it just trickles in, but that was just like obvious. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Yes, I got it. I will share that. Actually, let me share that really quick before we go on. Okay.
Okay.
That's funny. Man, I love it. Thank you. All right. So if you haven't heard me beating this drum heavily this year, it's not simply just listing optimization. Okay. It's not your mom's listing optimization, right? It's not your standard listing optimization that you've heard taught for the last 5 years. Okay. What I'm suggesting is advanced listing optimization. What I'm talking about is standing out from the competition, differentiating your product and its value, its benefits compared to the rest of the products in your product niche. Now, what that's going to do is if you can grab the attention of the shopper by having an image that's different from the other search results and that show up in your niche for your top terms, right? If you have a title that includes terminology that nobody else is using and also talks to a main feature, a main benefit of your product succinctly, right? In the first 80 characters that you fit that into, in order to get the shopper to come through. And then third is you're actually speaking in the features, in the bullet points, right? And in the images, and ideally in the videos that you have, 3 videos, you're speaking to the shopper, not to the search engine. You're speaking to the shopper about what are the primary benefits that this product is going to provide to them that answers the question, what's in it for me? Now, I've done an entire video just talking about that. It's up on my YouTube channel. I know this is something that we do in-house. We have a whole creative services team within Canopy Management. They do this full time for a living. But this is something I do on coaching on a regular basis. What this does is that when you separate, when you have your product stand out from the competition, you can be the most expensive product in your niche, right? Assuming that you've got similar features, as long as you're pointing out the extra value, the extra, not just, hey, here's 20 extra accessories. What I'm saying is, what's in it for me? Answering the question, what's in it for me if I purchase your product? You need to speak to the shopper and specifically state what it is that you're bringing to the table. What is it your product is bringing to the table that nobody else is? And I know some of you are saying it's like, well, but my product isn't any different than anybody else. Yes, you still can do it. I do this all day long where I'm working with products that are $20 more expensive than everybody else and sell the exact same product from the exact same manufacturer and the exact same color. And yet we do listing optimization that allows them to get higher shopper visibility, higher sessions, higher engagement, higher conversion rate, and therefore they can keep their price higher or they can even increase their price. It absolutely needs to be done in 2021 because the reason for that is that so many sellers have been following the same training that is out there and they're copying each other and everybody looks the same and within a niche, right? Within a product niche. So that is absolutely not only a prerequisite, but if you want a serious competitive advantage, that is how you do this. And I won't take up any more time on this, but
I've always said the you get to page 1 looking like the people on page 1, but once you're there, you have to be different. So it's sort of like a 2-step thing. That's like when you're in the fight, then you go see Steve, you get the listing optimizations, or you get your in-house creative team to do it. And that's when you see that 30-40% lift, that conversion rate lift, that clicking the orange button. That's the difference.
Yeah. And in fact, actually, there's one I actually just posted out to my YouTube channel, a recent case study that I did of a series that I'm doing. So the information is out there, including examples. I know Dan was asking for those. I can't share that in here because I took up more time than I was expecting to on this anyway. I want to move forward next. So appreciate you giving me the platform there for a couple minutes. Let's jump back into state of the channel here really quick here and talk about government and corporate, which sounds like a very boring topic, but there is a lot of things that are going on as far as like, what stimulus checks are coming out, what's going to go on with housing and rent and eviction rules and regulations. What about back to office notifications? what kind of pressure is the government and corporations going to put on employees that's going to pull them out of their house from their e-commerce shopping chair that they're usually in? What does that mean for sales for us?
Yeah, I mean, the Delta variant has really thrown the whole regulatory regime into a state of flux. Countries are relaxing rules. At the same time, companies are strengthening their rules around masks, around vaccines, et cetera. In Florida, as you know, all the nuts roll down to Florida, but there was a ban on a previously announced ban. So they banned vaccine passports and then they banned the ban. So it's the craziness just doubles up on itself. But
Nice.
I think the real impact is unemployment. We saw in March.
Oh, hopefully that's not me. What Patrick, I think, was trying to say is like we saw where unemployment, where a lot of companies have a shortage as far as, just give me a one really quick if you can hear me still. I want to make sure who's connected. Okay, good. Okay, so we lost Patrick again. So Patrick is down in crazy Florida. So, oh, he's back.
I'm back. Sorry. Yeah.
No, we lost you at, yeah, just go ahead and back it up a little bit. And
the unemployment in March, we saw the stimulus checks, we saw the charts, we saw the bump. It very definitely, people got the check. The first place they went to was online, right? Because the traffic increased more than the sales. So yep. We saw them run out there. It gave a nice bump to the economy. That's what it was designed to do. They don't want you to put it in your savings account. They want you to spend it. And that and Prime Day were really the only things that slowed up this sort of glide down. They're going away. The enhanced unemployment checks are going away. The eviction rules that were there for over a year are being rolled back. So it is very definitely going to be a different time than September, October of last year. At the same time, the companies are sort of going the other way. Some companies announced back to the office and now they've canceled them. Some companies are pressing hard, but requiring vaccines and masks. So it's very up in the air. So there is a lot of unknown there. I think one of the regulatory things that I haven't heard a lot of people talking about is on the privacy side. I think that's really important. I think that if we see anything as Amazon sellers, our biggest competitor is probably Amazon. So, when people talk
as a seller,
about,
you're saying our biggest competitor is Amazon.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what we see regulatory wise and on the Amazon platform is a lot of threatening to force Amazon to break up, to force the third party people to be in one place and Amazon owned products to be in another place, or at least leveling out that playing field. They've stolen some spots on page one for their brands, and I could see if there's any real regulatory change for Amazon sellers specifically, it might be to our benefit. The non-Amazon the non-Amazon brands, owned brands, should have a more level playing field. You'll know it'll happen in Europe probably before it'll happen here, but that should be sort of your guidepost. If it happens in Europe, get ready for it to happen here.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's going to be a lot of lawsuits and a lot of dragging of feet and a lot of not just litigation, but also, the lawmakers are going to come in and basically muck up the process as well.
Oh, let's hope not. Yeah.
So not, yeah. Good luck with that. All right, let's keep moving forward. All right, let's get into predictions and observations. Did we
You skipped like five?
There we go.
You
Observations.
skipped like 5 slides.
Did I really? No. Okay, observation. There we go. Let's skip one.
There you go.
All right, who got hurt during COVID? Certainly those, like we talked about earlier, certainly those that focused on unit sales and just moving product as opposed to actually taking a profit from product. As we state here, is the sales at any cost approach. Well, there's obviously a very big cost. It's just a case of, do you make the sales now and then you realize you're out of business when you're done. That's kind of where it ends up,
Right. Selling dimes for a nickel.
Yep. Exactly.
It's
Um,
I think
but
people hunting for top line growth really got hurt the most. Post-COVID traffic fell at the same time costs were rising, not just on Amazon, costs across the whole supply chain rose. So those people who were really top line focused got hammered from all sides.
Yep, agreed. I actually do have other observations here I want to throw in, aside from just these two, but who will thrive post-COVID? That's kind of a little bit more of a prediction, but it goes in line with this one here, is those who are more focused on profit per sale, or as I specified, as far as like post-event profit taking. In other words, really streamlining and focusing your ad spend so that you're pulling profits right after major events like Prime Day, like Cyber Monday, like Christmas Day, like whatever it is for your specific niche. You probably have peak sales days and then it drops off. And if you make the mistake of trying to chase the sales, try to chase additional sales by being more aggressive in your ad spend, you're going to blow whatever profitability you may have had during those peak sales. And so you really have to shift fast post-event to where you are focusing your ads onto those products, those ad types, and those ad targets like keywords and products categories that have the highest conversion rate and therefore should have an actual profit coming from those.
Right.
That is going to be how you're going to actually pull additional profit out of your business post sale, so that when you're surrounded by competitors who are basically acting the fool, as my wife would say, acting the fool and doing just kind of throwing money at the problem, hoping that is going to correct it, you're going to be, cashing out, if you will, and taking profit so that you will survive the next event and the next year. And, all the way up, you're always setting up that track record for profitability, which, as many of you may have considered, of course, already with all the big flood of aggregators going on these days, is at some point you've got to show a solid track record of profitability in your business in order to get the most out of your business when they're ready to purchase.
Yeah, I think the people who focused on efficiency won. Sales might have been down, but profitability went up. Secondary win for those people is as inventory restrictions forced people out of stock. Guess who went out of stock first? The guys who were selling with the really skinny margins. They went out of stock, and all of a sudden you ended up with further benefit for operating efficiently. I say, I think you win trusting the process, a well-run process. But to Brian's point, the tent poles, you don't want efficiency. You don't want to wait for the slowdown in sales or the expensive clicks to tell you to lower your bids. If you can read a calendar, you should know when to lower your bids. But the well-run process in normal times, period of slowing sessions, rising costs and clicks will pull you back. So if an account is at its target ACOS or above its target ACOS, a prudent systematic approach logically reduces spend in that kind of environment. And that's why those guys came, they came out the other end. They might have had less sales, but they had higher profitability. Right.
Now let's talk about some of the other observations that we didn't mention here that are going on in the world right now. Obviously, you've got things as far as, the perfect storm of not only COVID restrictions and limited labor and lack of labor, government policy, safety inspections and cleaning delays, these things. And of course, in the case of the canal, they got blocked.
Oh yeah, that's right. We forgot all about that.
Yeah, Panama, I guess. Shipping has increased significantly. And that's, I think most people have heard that. Anybody who's done any kind of a ocean container, whether it's a 20-foot, 40-foot, they know, the costs have gone up from 2-3 grand up to, 20-25 grand, it was 20 grand. And then freight forwarders and some of these other intermediaries started adding on additional fees because it became more of a hassle for them as well, and they needed to recover some of their losses as well.
And their prices are
so
going up too.
Their prices are going up
Yeah.
too. Yeah, that's true.
Gasoline, everything,
Yep.
everything's going up for them as well. So they're passing it
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. In fact, I was actually there was I was gonna mention a quote. I was actually speaking with one of the freight forwarders, and they had an interesting approach in that as a freight forwarder, part of their job is they need to be making sure that they are communicating every single little delay to their clients, any kind of workarounds that they're working on. They need to look for workarounds as far as like, well, if I take it from the warehouse and ship it 2 hours away to a different port, and then from that port I ship it to one of the common ports that are landing inside the United States, it's the cost may be the same, but the shipping time may be reduced by 1 to 2 weeks, which is, time is huge now, especially given that Amazon is putting more and more restrictions as far as like how much that we can send in, how long it takes to check in, depending on which warehouse you ship it in, which FBA warehouse you ship it into. And so definitely there's a lot more sellers who are starting to create 3PL warehouse relationships so that they have things kind of like in standby, ready to go to whatever the FBA center is of their choice. And of course, there's a huge parking lot outside of some of these ports. And so there's also things like the private ports, by some of the shipping carrier, by some of the ocean shipping carriers that also reduce the time even further, just in order to, with a little bit extra cost, but reduces the time by another couple of weeks. It can definitely make a huge difference as far as you're playing a time competition as opposed to a cost competition, right? Some of these other ones here, looks like Patrick's connection has been dropping like crazy. He's got storms going through his area, and so it keeps coming and going. Now let's kind of jump into the next one here. I think we're on like our last couple of slides here, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up, and we'll go ahead and talk about the discussions or questions. Predictions. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to see this year. So you've got retailers, of course, doubling down on in-store Black Friday. What I mean by that is retailers especially have to try to get back to some kind of normalcy, right? So what that means is that they're going to come in and they're going to probably, a lot of them had abandoned this whole like, oh, camp out, with your tents and everything and wait outside, in order to get your TV for half price on Black Friday, camp out the night before. They tried to get away from that, but honestly, I don't know how they're going to avoid that this year unless they go to like a whole week-long event where they're trying, prior to Black Friday through Cyber Monday, basically Cyber Week, where they are trying to say, get them into the retail store before they make a purchase online so those of you who might be in retail arbitrage, that might be a great opportunity for you. But as far as e-commerce sellers, this is when we need to make sure that we're making sure that we're increasing the value proposition and showing the benefits of the products that we have, and of course, how quickly they can get to it without, at the same time, avoiding the crowds, right? You can't really state that in your listing necessarily, but it certainly is a reality that some shoppers are thinking about, like, especially with Delta variant, they don't want to be going down and sitting in a line or shopping in a retail store. Some of these retail stores I've gone into lately, they're shoulder to shoulder, they're packed, and so it's going to be problematic, right? Seasonal traffic will be more similar to 2019 than 2020. 2020, obviously, we had a lot of oscillation going on, a lot of spikes and valleys. And so we would expect it to get back to some kind of normalcy that we saw maybe in 2019, albeit less sales, less traffic compared to what is on there, what should be on Amazon this year. So it's not like we're expecting it to jump back to, to normal and then some. I think it's going to go back to what was previously normal. Okay. saying you can't get in. Hold on 1 second here. All right. I was going to try to bring him back in here. Hold on 1 moment here. Oh, no, yeah, no, he lost it to a storm. All right. Some of the other things that we were talking about is, as far as Q4 sales this year, which I know is a big concern. One of the things that we recommend to our clients over at Canopy Management is we are paying attention, for them, but at the same time, we were also recommend it to them. We also recommend it to our other partners. And that is pay attention to your competition more closely than you ever have before. This is going to be the year. This is going to be the quarter where you're going to see competitors run out of stock. They can't restock. And if they show too often where they're running out of stock, then Amazon considers them to be unreliable and therefore may drop their ranking, organic ranking, and their advertising visibility. That's going to create an opportunity for you if you are paying attention to your competition. That's going to require some extra work on your part, but really knowing, really tracking, if you're using a tool or if you're doing it manually with a VA, maybe going out there and making sure that you're aware of okay, what kind of ranking are my competitors, my main competitors for the top couple of pages doing, and for the keywords that I'm trying to target, right? But also you're checking it frequently enough, every few days, maybe you're checking to see who's ran out of stock, right? Because that becomes a huge opportunity for you to advertise against, because they're still getting traffic. Even if they're out of stock, they're still getting traffic. But the shoppers are unsatisfied. And so they look around and they maybe see your ad, and you could snipe some sales away and some market share potentially from those competitors who run out of stock. And that includes some of their child variations. You just have to pay a lot more attention to what your competitors' weaknesses are. Where are they stumbling? Where are they falling? Right? Hopefully that makes some sense there. Give me a 1 in the chat there if that makes sense as far as that strategy. I know that I create some of my own tools in order to do that. I know certainly you could use things like Helium 10 or Seller Tools or some of these other popular tools in order to do some of that tracking. There's no perfect solution out there, of course, but definitely, hold on here. Yes, but it's difficult. Yes, I agree with you on that. All right, let me get back up here. Other predictions. Let me circle back around on that one here, based off of some of your questions here. As far as kind of wrapping up with a couple of last charts here, as far as e-commerce sales during Prime Day goes, is we're expecting that. Well, I mean, certainly this year, as far as like Prime Day goes, it was significantly different in that. What was it we were trying to say on this one? I forget now. It's not growing. Okay, that's what it was. Amazon, as far as Prime Day sales, is not growing incrementally as fast as it had previously. In other words, they're not having the huge growth spikes. Part of this is because that's normal across anything. Is you can't triple sales every single year. It just doesn't work that way, right? There's something. It's very rare for you to do that 2 years in a row, even. But you also have additional pressure from other e-commerce plays, not just Walmart and Etsy, but you're also talking about Target and some of the other online stores that are starting to get a lot more aggressive in their e-commerce play, especially as they come into Q4 of 2021. Certainly, there's always going to be restrictions in those businesses as well as far as shipping goes. So we'll see, but it's going to get a little bit more diversified. One of the things that I would highly recommend that you do is, first of all, from a taking action standpoint, here's where I hope you really tune in and take a photo here, right? So number 1 is get noticed so that you can get engage the shopper. So this is kind of what I was talking to you earlier about, as far as the way that we increase our price in order to absorb some of our additional shipping costs and advertising costs is not simply just by always fighting the advertising game. If you focus more on, and this is something I do in coaching and my agency does, for our clients, is that if you focus more on optimizing using advanced optimization of your product listing, unlike what everybody else is teaching these days, you can have your product get noticed first and foremost, so that your main image catches the eye, it pops, it catches the eye of a shopper who's scrolling through a bunch of similar products in your niche. Two, of course, is engage the shopper. Use your title, especially in the first 80 characters, because it's the first 80 characters that shows up in mobile. You can still use a full title. Just make sure that in the first 80 characters, your most compelling statement. You're not keyword stuffing. You should not have anything like for women, for men, for kids. All those kind of generic terms should not be in your first 80 characters, right? It should be specifically, what is the main keyword phrase that you're going after? What's the biggest, most compelling thing about your product in 3 words that you can put in there that is using terminology that no other seller is using in their title, because that's not only going to catch their eye as being out of place, but then it gives them something compelling to be curious about what you are selling that's different about your product, and the fact that it's at a higher price point for them to come through to your product listing. And at that point, that's where you grab their attention, you hook them in, and you show them that my product is better because it provides these key benefits that you really need. You do that in your images, you do that in your bullet points, and hear me very clearly on this next thing I'm about to say to you. On each image and on each bullet point, the consumer, the shopper, has to be able to absorb, to be able to read, to be able to see and understand within 5 seconds what is in it for them. If it takes longer for you to read through the bullet points, the images for each one of those, if it takes longer than 5 seconds to understand it clearly, have somebody else look at it who doesn't know your product. Can they consume each one of those within 5 seconds? If they don't, you've lost them. They've moved on. It's too much information that you're throwing out.
On mobile too.
And on mobile too.
On mobile, like you want somebody to review your.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes.
Do it on
have
mobile.
them review it on mobile. Yeah.
It's not.
So let me know in chat, who heard me on that one? Who understands what that means as far as that my 5-second rule? Put a question mark if you don't understand, or a 0. Because that is one of the things that has seen some of the large increases in conversion rate, not only engagement and conversion rate for our clients and for my students, that drastically separates them from the rest of the crowd, from the competition, that allows them to get their own traffic, to convert at a higher rate, to sell at a higher price point, to profit. And if you want to throw that profit back into more aggressive advertising, knock yourself out. Or you can continue to bring in new product and solve other problems that are in your business, right? But ultimately, if you are not taking the time to complement your on Amazon native PPC advertising and your DSP advertising, if you're at the scale where that's appropriate for you, if not, talk to us. We can definitely help you with or without that. We have a DSP team. We have our ad management team, the Patrick leads, and of course we have our creative services as far as the listing optimization, the advanced listing optimization. Awesome. Yeah. Good. I'm glad that message is getting across, because I'm having to kind of I feel like sometimes like people aren't hearing it, and they don't see what we see every single day as far as the advantage. We're seeing 38% average increase in conversion rates, the average lift in conversion rates, by simply just doing proper optimization.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't say it, loudly enough. Focus on the shopper's experience. It from soup to nuts, from the top to the bottom. Amazon still has a low barrier to entry for new people, but it's harder than ever to stay ahead of the competition. There's no way to game your way to the top of page 1 and stay there any longer. You need a great product with a great listing, with great images and great copy and a great advertising strategy, or you're just buying rockets for Bezos.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. One of the questions I was going to answer that came in really quick here was, since multiples for Amazon brands are growing rapidly, it seems like it is best time ever to prepare for exit, which I would definitely agree on. Does Canopy have any success stories of helping to sell businesses? Yes, that's actually kind of a running joke that we have inside. Is we and I would actually kind of recommend, and you've heard me say this, Patrick, I'd recommend is like, the ad team should get a trophy for when we lose a client because they got acquired, because it keeps on happening, right? We boost them up so much because we're in the business of doubling, tripling businesses so that they can scale up to the point where they become very juicy for acquisition. And of course, we lose them when that happens, unless of course the acquiring company doesn't have a team as good as ours. That is kind of a common scenario that we run into lately, right, Patrick?
Yeah, well, that was when it first started happening. The Wall Street guys were like, "All right, yeah, we'll handle it from here." But now I think they're getting a little smarter, and they understand that the reason they fell in love with this company and dropped a couple million on it was because it had a great product, but it had a great listing. And it had great images, and it had a great advertising strategy. It had all of those things I just listed. The product is the primary thing, right? That's what gets them. That's what gets them to their wallet. But all of those other things were purchased by that aggregator or that investor, and so we end up with a lot of guys staying on. Just to make sure everything continues to be run the same way it has been. So luckily they've been smart that way.
Yeah, it's both exciting and sad at the same time when it happens, but it is what it is. We're that's the business that we're in. So
we lose dealing. I like dealing with the entrepreneurs more than I like dealing with the white shoe guys and the Wall Street guys. So you do lose that. Because they have a different perspective because they were there, 2 decimal points ago, and now they're handing it off. So
right. But the nice thing about that is, we've got a couple of them that says like, I'm just, I'm gonna launch a new product and I'm coming back to you guys.
Oh yeah, we just had one of those today. Yeah.
Yep. So, it's like, of course you will. All right, so Patrick, let's go ahead and do a final recap here, so we can wrap up for today. Thank you for joining me on this. So some of the things that we want to make sure that you're doing, of course, is don't follow in line with a lot of the novice sellers that might be participating in your niche. That means don't panic, right? Keep perspective as far as compared to what your own observations, especially if you've been doing this for a while. Pay attention to the fact that, look, if traffic is going down and people are being distracted from shopping online, the conversion rates are going to go down. That's going to impact your advertising costs, the effectiveness of the advertising as far as the conversion rates, and therefore your profitability. Be aware that's always going to happen. Find the seasonality chart we were talking about in the Facebook group, or hit me up and I can get it to you. And just be aware of, okay, I expect traffic to go down. Therefore, my conversion rates are going to drop before and after that event. And profitability, of course, is going to be affected. Therefore, I should be focusing my ads. I don't know, Patrick, if you want to add anything regarding ad management goes as far as focusing ads post-event, and instead of panicking, focus instead.
Yeah, I think you really want to narrow your focus post these big tentpole events. You have a lot of people driving a lot of traffic, and we saw the charts earlier. The traffic goes away. It's like Wednesday, it's here. Thursday, it's 10x. Friday, it's 10x. Saturday, it's here again. So know that going into it and out of it, like Brian said, those tent poles pull forward as much as they push back. So the people who were going to buy earlier in the week before that event, push it off to see if something they like is going up for sale. And the converse is also true. You're not going to wait till next week if Prime Day is tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. That also kind of brings up, like if you're at the level, if you're at the appropriate level, you can be too small in order to do Amazon DSP. Trust me on this. We
Mhm.
know
Mhm.
we do recommend that you diversify your traffic, including Amazon DSP, which is Amazon's second platform. If you're not familiar with it, or if you are making the mistake of having Amazon manage your demand side platform or DSP advertising, then you probably already know that that's a train wreck. If not already, then you definitely want to get that handed off to those who are going to manage it in-house. We manage everything in-house. And we have very specific strategies that have a proven track record. Now I'll share that slide again. I'll have to find it here, but I'll share the slide again as far as some of our average profit and sales and conversion rate increases. That includes DSP.
One
We've
of
got a
the
phenomenal team
one
led
of the
by
interest
Erica.
one of the interesting things Brian was bringing up about DSP about Amazon.
Before he cuts out. Amazon manages DSP like a billboard. In other words, they're focused more on impressions and not so much on profitability. We don't have that luxury. We have not only do we have lower minimums going into it, we certainly recommend that you are selling at least, I would say at least $50,000 a month in order to really consider using DSP. Otherwise, it doesn't really scale well. Our highest track record, of course, those organizations that are doing over 100,000. We got a phenomenal track record. It's beautiful. But we do have a lower minimum, so it's not going to cost you the 25, $15,000 to $25,000 minimum per month in ad spend that Amazon wants. And our focus is on your profitability, not in sales and profitability, not on just ad impressions like Amazon would have, right? And so that's I believe that's probably where Patrick was trying to reiterate is the difference between Amazon managing a demand side platform ad channel or a DSP channel versus a qualified agency team like Canopy Management. I already kind of beat to death the focus on the shopper experience with that advanced listing optimization, right? So I certainly recommend is that you reach out to us. Let's see if I've got actually that one here. Yeah, there we go. So the next one here, you can see that link down at the bottom. If this is a conversation you want to have, there's no obligation. We're not currently charging for our evaluation. Essentially what we do is we say, okay, are we a good fit to work together? Let's go ahead and get some of your data so that we can do our evaluation. Then we come back and say, you know what, here's where you're doing it right. Here's where you're doing it wrong. Here's where you're really screwing it up. So the good, bad, the ugly, right? You may choose to work with us as a result of that, or you may choose just to implement it on your own. That is your choice, right? Not, there's no hard pressure or no sell on it. But you can see by some of the metrics that we have on the left-hand side, our average conversion rates, average profit growth, average conversion lift, average profit growth. You can see is that we do know what we are doing and we do it very well. And we do it very consistently. So if that is a conversation, we're not cheap. I'll just be right up front here. If you're getting started just now, then there's probably just some training resources that you need to be tapping into, including any free resources or there's paid resources. I can offer you any of those through the Amazon PPC troubleshooting channel on the Facebook group. But if you are ready to scale up and you know that this is the year where you are likely going to look to talk to aggregators, you want to be in the best position you can to get the highest valuation. We're the kind of organization that helps you to do that. So let me go ahead and open it up here. I'll leave this slide here for you, but let me go ahead and open it up to any last minute questions before I wrap it up for today. So we covered quite a bit. In fact, let me go ahead and zoom all the way back up to what we covered today. And we covered traffic, we covered ad costs, we talked about government and corporate intervention and policies, and we talked about our observations and predictions, including what you've absolutely got to do as far as your advanced listing optimization in order to warrant increasing the price of your product in order to absorb some of these costs. So any last questions? I'm going to do a last call as far as questions in the chat here. Isaac, okay, I got yours. So if we do use Canopy, how many months after going with Canopy should we look to sell? Or is that on an individual basis? You're absolutely correct. Is an individual basis. It really kind of depends on what kind of a track record that you've created. Typically what aggregators are looking at is they're looking at the last 2 years, right? They're going to absolutely, for sure, they're going to be most scrutiny is going to be on the last 12 months running, right? That's how they're going to come up with, things like their SDE or their EBITDA. If you're familiar with those kind of financial terms when it comes to profitability month over month, year over year, those are the things that, because we focus on those, we know that those are going to be the most valued by those companies that do acquisitions. Now, if that may simply just mean, as far as just kind of cleaning things up in 1 to 2 quarters, if you haven't done any kind of a track record of progressive profitability and measured growth over the last at least 12 months, that I would say stick with it until you get 12 months of data. It's a little bit premature. You're definitely not going to get the valuation you want to if you hit it too early. Trust me, there's enough money coming into the space still, and there will be come next year, that you've got some time in order to get there. If you're kind of on the cusp or need to clean things up and really, or if, of course, like we said, like what we're doing is we're scaling up, we're doubling and tripling in some cases. So it kind of really depends on a case per case basis. Jeff, if your competitor's product is being sold by Amazon, who are you bidding against for PPC? Well, you're bidding against Amazon for sure. The product brand or Amazon. If your competitor's product is being sold, oh, I see what you're saying. If it's being sold and shipped, as in if they're using a 1P or a vendor kind of sales process. Yeah, I mean, so Amazon is typically the one that is running the ads on that. The vendors do have the ability to add on their own ads as well. So you could be competing against either one of them in that situation. As far as who is paying for the clicks on sold by Amazon, it can be either Amazon, and they usually do kind of a weak job at it, honestly, or it could be the manufacturer or the vendor themselves that is doing additional advertising. So it can go both ways on that. I usually recommend the vendors do their add on their own advertising, because frankly, I've seen what Amazon does and they don't do it effectively enough. So yeah, who's paying for the clicks? Mostly the vendor, competitor brand or the vendor, and then some of it's going to be by Amazon. All right. Let me take one more question and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. If not, let me know in the chat here. Did you get, give me a 5 if you got value out of this. You got some takeaways you're going to implement. Looks like I've got one other question that came in here. Any long-term strategies, tactics sellers can start seeding now to be in better shape for Q4? Well, Q4 is right around the corner. So if you don't have your inventory, that's your first problem, right? You've got to have inventory, and inventory probably on standby, depending on what your IPI inventory performance index levels are, as far as being able to ship into different warehouses that Amazon has, because as soon as, expect delays as far as checking in your product. So first and foremost, of course, make sure that you have your inventory equation solved, right? You don't have something that is, if you haven't got something on the ocean already, then you're probably running late. It's probably going to take a couple of months to get those. If you are shipping by air or thinking about shipping by air, make sure you're getting your total cost of receiving that and understand the cost and how that affects your margins, your profitability of your products before you implement that. But your first priority, of course, is solve the inventory issue. Second, without a doubt, make sure that you are implementing some of these things that I talked about as far as standing out to the competition. Let me jump back down to that one slide here. Let me get to it here. As far as getting noticed, standing out, I do have a video on another one coming out here shortly, a video on standing out from the competition on my YouTube channel. Just going through kind of an example case study that's pretty easy, should be easy to follow along, hopefully. And that is, how do you get noticed among the rest of your competitors? How do you engage the shoppers so that they come click through to your product listing to become a session, right? How do you then speak to that shopper in terms of they feel and understand what's in it for them? And then ultimately, like we said here, is you're focusing on profitability. But the second thing, of course, is really doing that advanced listing optimization in order to get that. So my agency, my own coaching, the example video that I have on my YouTube, those are all great resources there. All right. And as far as ads go, let me kind of wrap it up in one final comment there. As far as ads go, focus on your ads on the highest, those products that have the highest conversion rate in your portfolio, those ad types, sponsored product, sponsored brand, sponsored display, DSP, that have the highest conversion rate, and then the ad targets, auto, keywords, products, category, those are your ad targets. Focus on those that have the highest profitability or have the highest conversion rates, because that typically is what's going to transfer into profitability throughout the year. So tighten up your ads. Don't simply just go crazy trying to get the traffic. Focus in on, am I making a profit for the ads that I am currently running? Okay, so we have one other question. You said, if we sign up for PPC only services from Canopy Management, okay, pick one of the three. I see what you're saying. Can we expect non-advertising advice? Yes. From your ad managers? Definitely. Yeah. That's pretty much part of it. You may not, we're certainly going to point things out. It's like, look, here's what's working better for, our other clients, or what's working best for in the industry. We would certainly make those recommendations. Obviously, we have our own in-house team that can do it for you if you want, but it's not like we're going to avoid telling you what you need. Nor are we going to pressure you in any kind of way. It's just not the kind of organization that we are. That includes things like pricing advice, competitor research, inventory forecasting. Yes, we do a lot of that. And so, yeah, but our three primary focus is, of course, is the advanced listing optimization, the native Amazon PPC advertising, and of course, then the Amazon DSP advertising, and then all these other things as far as advice goes. That's just kind of gets injected as part of our normal working relationship with our partners. And again, we do everything in-house, and we do require you to be on weekly meetings. So if you're not up for weekly meetings, to have that open communication channel on a regular basis, then it's a non-start. So that's how we work, because we have the track record to prove it. So, all right. Thank you once again. I'm going to sign off now. My name is Brian Johnson. I had Patrick Donnellan along here with me from my Canopy Management agency team. Go out to canopymanagement.com and click on the Get Started in order to get that initial conversation going. Again, it is not a pressure thing. It's just really just like, we're going to tell you, is it a good fit? Here's where we think you definitely need some improvement in order to reach your next level. If that works for you, great. If you want to work with us, awesome. But again, it's a two-way conversation. So thank you once again. Thank you for joining me today. And I will we'll talk to you on the next one. So take care, everybody. Have a good weekend.